Good afternoon. I'm Anas, founder and MD Hurun India. On behalf of IIFL Wealth and Hurun India, I welcome you all to the launch of IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022. It's so good to meet you in person. I hope the worst of the pandemic is behind us. It was testing time for all of us personally and as a nation, and I hope the experience of lockdown will enable us to stay positive and resilient for the ongoing journey. Uh, India as a nation took the challenges of pandemic resolutely and emerged from it relatively in a better position compared to the rest of the world. The public and private institutions in the country rose to the challenges in terms of testing billions, supplying vaccines, or even giving drugs to the world. India is possibly a lone growth story in the world right now. And it is more promising than any other growth story because it's broad based, not boosted by state subsidized export or unprecedented growth from a single sector or low interest rate and stuff like that. The economy is now primed, accelerating, and ready to take off into a higher orbit. And India has undergone a structural shift over the last decade and is now the fifth largest economy in the world. And the share of India's GDP to the global GDP is at 3.5% as against 2.6% in 2014 and is likely to cross 4% in 2017. India's position in the global economy is best epitomized by INS Vikrant, India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, taking to the seas on September 2nd and catapulting India into a select club of world's greatest maritime powers. During the month, India also took further step towards becoming a manufacturing hub for semiconductors and display fabs. Apart from ensuring self-sufficiency and immunity to future supply chain disruptions and these strategic intermediates, this will also open up job opportunities and investment horizons. In this context, IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022 tells the story of India's economy, its current state, and future trend by listing out some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country. The list chronicles the wealth creation story of young entrepreneurs, professional managers, business leaders who focus on value creation. And I believe India's story is possibly, the most promising wealth creation story in the world right now. The trends in the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022 prove that India has taken booster shots against the global crisis. Be it Ukraine war or inflationary pressures, the Indian growth story continues against all odds as 149 new entrants enter the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List, which is currently at a number of 1,103. And for the first time, the cumulative wealth of all the entrants hit 100 lakh crores rupees in rupees terms. India also gave a new number to Gautam Adani to the Hurun Global Rich List as well. The unprecedented wealth creation in past 5 years in India, when other countries are stalling and are in a recessionary mode, reaffirms that India is the growth engine of the global economy. The new additions of IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List has occurred at a time when the valuations are at low, both in listed and privately held companies. The number of entrants in the list has increased by 60% in the past 5 years. The India is best positioned to utilize or take advantage of this robust domestic demand, a stable political landscape, favorable demographics, and a sustainable external debt. The next 25 years belong to India, and as Prime Minister proclaimed, it's Amrit Kal for the country. From an Indian wealth creation perspective, 2022 will have to be, when people remember 2022, we have to, of course, remember the rise of Mr. Gautam Adani. Briskly expanding his commodity trading company into coal to port to energy conglomerate. He is the only Indian to have built not one but 7 companies with a market cap of more than 1 lakh crores. The cumulative wealth of the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022, excluding Adani, is just 2.7% compared to the overall 9%. The 2012, when we put out the 2012 Rich List, Adani's wealth was hardly 1/6 of Ambani's wealth, and no one could imagine that he could overtake Ambani to become the richest man in India in 10 years. This, in fact, I believe is a reflection of dynamism and structural transformation in Indian economy. The success of a first-generation entrepreneur like Gautam Adani exemplifies the potential for growth in an economy which is witnessing economies at scale, and you could see a lot more self-made entrepreneurs coming to the forefront. When we talk about self-made entrepreneurs, we should also speak about family businesses. Be it Tata or Birla, India has nurtured some of the most respected family business houses in the world. Almost 60% of IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List is going to witness the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer in the next 10 years. So that's going to be the one of the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer in the world. The young leaders of the family, supported by some of the brightest professional managers and investors, will turbocharge further wealth creation amongst the family businesses. What makes the Indian wealth creation story truly inspirational is that the 67% of the list is self-made, and this is up from 54% 5 years ago. And the size of the list has also grown by about 400, 500 over the last 5 years. So that percentage has gone from 54 to 67. The wealth creation engine of first-generation entrepreneurs and professional managers is on full throttle and is a very important driver for India's GDP to hit US dollar 5 trillion. India's bench strength or the pipeline of entrepreneurs can be understood best from the startup ecosystem, which is possibly the largest in the world with about 80,000 startups. As per Hurun Global Unicorn Index and the Hurun Global Gazelles Index, India has the third highest number of unicorns and the gazelles in the world. Gazelles means those companies with a valuation of 500 million US and who could potentially become a unicorn in the next 2-3 years based on the feedback from the VC ecosystem. The IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022 has 100 entrants from various startups, and the share of startups is going to likely to go increase manyfold. And this has also resulted, the startup culture has also resulted in more young entrepreneurs entering the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. Just to give you some kind of numbers, when we launched the list about 11 years ago, the youngest in the list was 37. Last year was about 23, and this year it's 19. The wealth creation has also become more decentralized and dispersed. Over the last decade, the number of cities in the list rich list jumped to 82 from 10. So in 2012 it was 10, now it's 82. I expect in the next 10 years to have entrants from at least 100 to 110 cities to contribute rich list entrants to IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. The list has also become more inclusive. The number of women on the list is 55 this year compared to about 13 10 years ago. The impact of dollars. The dollar appreciation, I would say, has had an impact on the overall estimate in terms of number of billionaires. India has actually lost about 16 billionaires this year because of the dollar appreciation. If the dollar had stayed the same as that of last year, the number of dollar billionaires would have actually increased by 3 to 241. So India currently has 221 dollar billionaires, down 16 from compared to last year's IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. There has been some COVID winners. The post-pandemic, some of the COVID winners such as generic pharma, diagnostics, software services face headwinds. While pharma and diagnostics dropped mainly on the subdued demand post-COVID, software service industry has taken a beating due to fears of recession in developed markets that house most of these outsourcing clients. Another big hit came by the way of startup IPOs. Some of the high-profile startups post-IPO had to realign the valuation spread between institutional and retail investors. Having said the aforementioned, we also believe that startup wealth creation is going to continue, although within the new rules in the game. One industry which has greatly benefited and which we've seen had a positive impact in the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List is chemicals, which added about 20 new entrants. And in that, specialty chemicals has had definitely a boost in this year's list. And believe this is mainly powered by two ingredients. One is the strong tailwinds in export due to shift in supply chain driven by China plus one policy and demand recovery in domestic end user segments. Hospitality is back. The entrants in the hospitality sectors have reported a wealth gain of 47%, and the resumption of business, leisure travel, we all see that hospitality ban. We even faced it while we were trying to book this banquet for the press conference today. But the hospitality generally has come back very well. Real estate market is also showing recovery, and overall the cumulative wealth of the entrants in the real estate sector has increased by 21%. So these are some of the trends that we've seen in the industry, and a lot more is mentioned in the report, and I can answer any specific questions. Another important sector of individuals that is creating wealth in India and which will continue to create wealth in India, I believe, are professional managers. As mentioned earlier, India is going to possibly witness some of the biggest, possibly the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer in the recent times. And when that happens, more and more professional managers are going to play an active role in the traditionally run family business, number one. And number two, more and more highly educated, super talented Indian professionals are taking leadership roles in super valuable companies, not just in India, but also abroad. So you'll see a lot more professional managers, creating wealth or taking participation in IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. The resilience of India Inc. during global chaos can be best illustrated through a comparison of the indices as well. The broader Nifty has held its own and performed better than its global peers in the last 12 months to September 8, 2022. Index has dropped only about 6% compared to Nasdaq's 23% and Nikkei is 29%. And UPI, I really have to mention about three things which is possibly going to drive some of the wealth creation in the future. One is UPI, second is ONDC, and third is EV. UPI has been a phenomenal success. India has one of the highest fintech adoption rate, and what the opportunity really is, around 190 million are still unbanked, and this makes it a breeding ground for wealth creation based on fintech. Likewise, ONDC, Open Network of Digital Commerce, is going to be a game changer in India. I really see that this will democratize buyer-seller platform and that ecosystem, which will have retail, logistics, tech stack, all those players in the ecosystem are going to create super valuable companies. I've witnessed this firsthand. I've investing into one company which is on the ONDC tech stack. The kind of interest that investors have for such companies is quite exciting. So ONDC is one initiative that's going to create more super value wealth creators. EV is another ecosystem that has a potential to contribute new entrants to IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. In the China Rich List 2021, the most number of new entrants came from the EV sector. In India, we only have 2 entrants from EV. And even if India hits 50% adoption rate compared to China, you're going to see hundreds of entrepreneurs from the ecosystem creating significant wealth in the EV sector. That many additions coming in IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. Hurun Report's mission is promoting entrepreneurship through list and research. The stories of the people from IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List tell the story of Indian economy. Hurun India has managed to bring the cutoff for IIFL Wealth Hurun Rich List from 1,000 crore when we began 10 years ago to 1,800 crores. And this enables us to tell exciting stories about local heroes from smaller cities and towns, stories that might otherwise get missed. It's also getting harder to make the top of the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. The cutoff to make to the India top 100 since its inception, for example, has increased by 18 times to about 18,000 crores now. And to get into top 10 is next to impossible. To enter the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List top 10, one needs to have a wealth of about 1,19,000 crores. Assuming that every one Hurun Rich Lister that we have missed, two listers that we missed for every one we found, we estimate the total size of the list should be about 3,000. So our objective is to find as many stories as possible. We at Hurun India are very proud to have partnered with IIFL Wealth, who is playing a very important role in wealth preservation for most of the big names in the IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. I look forward to taking any further questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anas. This year, IIFL Wealth continues to partner with us as we release the India Rich List. Mr. Yatin Shah is co-founder and joint CEO of IIFL Wealth, India's largest pure-play wealth management company. His strong people skills make him a very approachable leader. He leads the sales initiatives in India as well as manages key NRI clients from the US, UK, and Singapore. His role includes influencing product and technology development, brand building, and adding finesse to client experiences. May we first take a look at the corporate AV of IIFL Wealth before we hear from Mr. Yatin Shah himself. Can we have the video played, please?
In 2008, IIFL Wealth dreamt big. Today, we are the leaders in wealth and asset management, credit solutions, and succession planning. With more than $44 billion of assets under management, the trust of over 10,000 clients. We've achieved this faster than any other Indian financial enterprise, not by following the cardinal rules of financial success, but by writing our own. We've challenged the definition of conventional management and proved that conviction and hard work are the fastest routes to success. We haven't hired employees. We've attracted people with an owner's mindset. Because when you own something, success becomes personal. Ours is a company where owners work and workers own. Today, we can put an exact number on the revenue we've generated, the profits we've made, the taxes paid, the awards we've won, and the number of lives we've transformed. What we can't put a number on is the unending trust we've built. It's not without reason that we've chosen the Shri Yantra to define our purpose. With a symbol that embodies Goddess Lakshmi's tool to create unending wealth, we are well prepared for the next decade and more. We are here. We are now. We are IIFL Wealth.
Thank you. The stage is yours, Mr. Yatin.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are very proud to be associated with IIFL Wealth India Hurun list now in 4th year. Thank you, Anas, for this partnership. Anas has covered a lot, but I just think that further extending, I think that the three, out of three factors or many factors governing what the rich list is talking all about is the demographic dividend what India is seeing now, the democracy what India has the biggest advantage than many other countries, and I think the whole digitalization which is driving innovation and disruption in many industries across. I think India is, I would say, platform ready for all the reforms that government has done in last 10 years, regulation changes in every sector, making more attractive for investors to enter India, introduction of RERA, GST, UPI, FDI policy. I think digitalization in every sector, every economy through mobile data, democratization, financial sector reforms. I think the entire platform today is driving what we are seeing is 7-8% of GDP growth. And it's a right ecosystem for what we call is entrepreneurship to get democratized in India. And that's where the wealth creation is starting. I think what we've seen in our, if you see the $44 billion of AUM, it's the function of last 10 years. The first generation of entrepreneurs has led to the contribution of that. And that tells you the real story of India. We spoke about metros. I think it's no more the metros. It's what we are seeing today is the real wealth creation is across the cities of India. More than 80 cities is where the new wealth creation is happening from. Almost 1100 numbers which came from represents a fairly diverse group of entrepreneurs, sectors, and also ages. So the interesting analysis which Anna shared was, the average age on the Hurun list is 61. When you only pick up the last 10 years of startup founders, the average age falls down to 40. So this is what India is, throwing up. I think the real background, if you go and see the first generation entrepreneurs, is the educational background which they are coming from. So top B school, IIT, IIMs, majority of the founders from the tech is 90% coming from there. It gives you that with a good education background, with country like India and access of capital, which was the biggest bottleneck for any startup or entrepreneur. Now no more of these things exist. So this drive of entrepreneurship is only going to increase. I think on last count there was 90,000 startups in India, and the number of startups just leads to the success stories increasing. We're talking about today 200 unicorns. I think next 10 years we're talking about 1,000 unicorns. And the average age of Hurun is coming down from 60 just because the sheer ecosystem which is driving the first generation entrepreneur. So hopefully as the size of the economy grows from 3 trillion to 5 trillion, the size of Hurun list will also grow from 1,000 to 2,000. Thank you, Arun.
Thank you, Mr. Yatin. Now, for the moment we're all waiting for, may I request the presence of Mr. Yatin, Mr. Anas, and also Mr. Ronak Seth, who's the head of marketing and client experiences at IIFL Wealth, to kindly join me on stage for the official unveiling of the list of the hour, please. I think we can give them a round of applause as well. No, we'll stand on the sides. So it's time now for the official virtual unveiling of this year's IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022. It is our pleasure to unveil this list that tells the story of India's economy while chronicling the wealth creation story of young entrepreneurs, professional managers, and business leaders who focus on value creation. Pause to capture this moment. The IIFL Wealth Hurun India Rich List 2022 is here to tell us the story of India's economy today and of the expected trends of tomorrow. The list of the most successful wealth creators in the country. We have a moment. If the photographers would like to get their Kodak moment, we can request. Thank you, gentlemen. We're just going to take a moment to set up the stage for the next session of this afternoon. To enlighten us on some of the most exciting findings of the list, we have a fireside chat. And joining Mr. Yatin and Mr. Anas virtually all the way from Delhi for the same is Mr. Anirudha Taparia. Anirudha is the joint CEO of the wealth management business at IIFL Wealth, which caters to industrialists, new age technology founders and professionals, including leading CEOs, lawyers, as well as distinguished sportspersons and artists. May I request for the Zoom settings also to be in place, please, so we can view Mr. Anirudha. Good afternoon, Mr. Anirudha. Just introducing you to the audience here. Anirudha brings to the table a rich experience of over 2 decades in financial services and strong client relationships. He has been instrumental in building IIFL Wealth and Asset Management's business across the globe. Over to you three gentlemen.
Anirudha, can you hear me?
Yes, Anas, loud and clear. Thank you so much for inviting me on the Zoom call.
Thanks for...
And
thanks.
congratulations for the 11th year.
Yeah, same here. Thank you. Thanks for the partnership. Thanks a lot. So I'll start with you, Anirudha, since Yatin and I have had our share of words a few minutes back. The first question to you is the share of the first generation entrepreneurs is increasing in the list, and you'll also see a lot more younger generation coming into taking over roles in the family business and so on. So from your perspective, how has that changed? What do you see on the ground? What we see is numbers and these stories from a data and analytics person, but you would have this discussion, most of it in person. Just want to know from your perspective, how do you see that transformation?
So Anas, I think, I heard you and Yatin speak, and there were a lot of data which you already had shared, but, picking up some more data from what you spoke and some more data in terms of what we have kind of researched. So clearly it's evident that the list now is about 1100, more than 1000 crores, but we all know that this list could be at least 2x or 3x more than what it is, because what is captured by the Hurun Rich List is largely the regulatory or the through the company filing, etc. In reality, this list would actually be 2x or 3x. The number is a little difficult to fathom, of only 1100 more than 1000 crores, but we know that this would have been at least 3.5 or 4000. Number two, it's very interesting to see the youngest age of a person coming in is actually a teenager, a 19-year-old person who's joined us on this list. So it's very interesting, as what Yatin mentioned, the 61 and the 40 number in terms of the age of people coming in. What's also interesting is there were 65 founders or 37 unicorns and overall 100 founders. And what is exciting is there were 700 of this 1100 are first generation entrepreneurs. Now that clearly shows the way India is growing. And I would probably use the word actually catapulting into the next league. To have 700 of 1100 is just incredible of the first generation founders.
And do you have any thoughts, Yatin? And we did speak about intergenerational wealth transfer before the press conference, and that's something that you've been witnessing, and you see that's going to play out. Because I really think that's a very interesting trend, because you would see a rise of professional managers getting access to good equity in businesses, and there'll be a lot more value creation from a professional manager's perspective. And India being a young country, that trend is going to have a snowball effect in terms of wealth creation. So just want to know your thoughts.
See your pie of wealth creation. I think we're breaking down into business families or who are going to transfer wealth to second generation, Gen Next. Then you have the first generation, and then you have professional managers. I think the growth is coming from the first generation. Overall, the business families also are growing in terms of net new wealth creation. So their growth is not stagnating or something like that. In terms of numbers are clearly favoring the first generation. And what we're going to see subsequently, as the transfer of wealth takes place, ownership, separation of ownership and management happen. You will see further impetus of representation of professional wealth creation coming, and that's what's happened in West, right? You see, your report talks about how professional have created wealth by running large companies.
And just one question about the startup wealth creation. I think IIFL Wealth recently acquired Mumbai Angels, which came in news, and you have some specific focus on startup and young wealth creators and so on. All these new policies, ONDZs and logistics framework and everything, right? How do you see that side evolve? What are your specific thoughts? And maybe you and Anirudha can take it. Both of you can take this.
From our perspective, are there too many synergies? I think the generation next are increasingly driven by either creating their own startup, investing a startup, or trying to have a strategic synergy of their existing business by founding a new startup idea. How do you capture that ecosystem if you're not starting from ground zero? I think the Mumbai Angels gives us a phenomenal platform to try and capture what's happening in the startup ecosystem in India. If you see the number of deals, number of first time, I would say the seed money or grant money getting raised on Mumbai Angels platform for startup is phenomenal. For us also it is important for how do we, because a lot of family offices and large HNIs want to get directly into startup. How do we aggregate all of those startup ideas and bring it to our clients? Third thing, I think it's not about just an asset class. I think there are multifold reasons that what happened in West also is the innovation, the capital which chases in terms of diversification in the portfolio, getting strategic fits. I think you have to be starting early and not wait for company to grow and become mature stage. So the number of participants, whether it's Gen X, whether it's family offices, whether it's VCP investors, it's very important for us to capture the system. And Mumbai Angels is one of the first, if you see their history, is the first like a VC platform which got created in India.
Anirudha, do you have anything to add? Was Gurugram is possibly after Bangalore one of the biggest startup kind of city in India?
No, absolutely. In fact, your list also this year mentions Gurugram as one of the cities in terms of the wealth it's entered. Clearly, I think what Yatin mentioned about it's more because today, if you look at a lot of clients, see what has happened is one, clearly education and travel has got, or accessibility to deals across the world has got a lot of the new generation entrepreneurs interested apart from the business, also in terms of promoting startup culture. Number two, many of them look at strategically also in terms of investing into various companies which may be kind of associated either backward, forward, or kind of a group company synergy which can probably bring in. Many of these startups kind of provide deals at a very early stage for many of them to come in. And many of the startups are looking at some of the senior people not only to come in and put money, but also probably assume as a mentoring platform also from that particular aspect. So I think it was very probably a right symbiotic fit into our fold in terms of looking at Mumbai Angels from that particular angle and kind of merging along with our business, because most of the client would want to have an access to these kind of deals. And showcasing or aggregating that what Yatin mentioned would be our what we'd like to showcase them through this particular platform.
So we can also take some questions now from any of you, and then we can.
So very interesting, Anas. Meanwhile the question comes, but we were discussing also before this, and one can clearly see from this report, it's very interesting how specialty chemicals is actually in the list is really booming. And it's pretty much kind of edging out to beat pharma in a particular sense. RE, for example, is really picking up. Hospitality seems to be really back in action. Now, this list actually shows all these things. So, for example, software has taken a little back seat. Diagnostic has taken a little back seat. Metals have really taken a little back seat. So you can see sector-wise also, some of them have really done well, and some of them have really taken a little back seat. So I think it's very interesting. Once anybody gets through the report, you can clearly distinguish between the various companies or startups or industries also.
Anybody with a question would request you to just raise your hand and we'll get the mic to you.
In this list, the cutoff for this top 50 has increased the most. It's gone up more than 5 times from 5,000 to 30,000 crore. Yeah. So what's the reason for this space getting so crowded? And how crowded is this, the earlier, the 1,000 crore space? How many people are there with that kind of wealth?
I think towards the last page, you will see a detailed split up of various thresholds over the last 10 years. 50 crores, top 50, top 100, top 10, you will see the split up there. Yeah, so I don't really exactly remember the numbers, but I can break that up. But then one interesting factor is that possibly see, my hypothesis is that uh, the entrance to IIFL Wealth Hurun Rich List, they are creating some of the most valuable businesses in the country, right? And sometimes, I've heard people say that if you can build a business in India, you can really build it anywhere in the world. So that kind of shows sometimes it could be a little difficult to build business in India in that sense. So what the further is that these entrepreneurs are possibly some of the smartest minds in the country with some excellent team in place and so on. They've found out the right kind of opportunities. They have weathered recession or COVID or whatever. They've all stuck together. And because of which, if you look at the top 50, which is the names that which has been there, over the last year, it's predominantly the names that you see. They've all added value to their core businesses, be it Mr. Ambani, Adani, with their Kotak, and all those guys. And one very exciting factor is that the top 50 also, if you look at top 50, there are entrepreneurs from various sectors. You've got a retail billionaire, you've got a banking billionaire, you've got an energy billionaire, you've got a telecom billionaire. There's so much diversity in terms of wealth creation, not really focused on one tech or, this tech or anything like that. So, I mean, that could be the reason why the cutoff is gone. And Yatin mentioned in his speech that for India to, India will hit, when India hits 5 trillion GDP, there'll be a lot more entrants in the list. I actually think about the corollary, right? Only if there are super valuable or billion-dollar companies or startups in India, can India hit a 5 trillion economy. And if there are super valuable companies or billion-dollar enterprises, there'll be a lot more billionaires and there'll be a lot more wealth creators. So my hypothesis is that for India to hit 5 trillion or 10 trillion or whatever the number, the GDP, you will have to create so many wealth creators in the country. And as part of the whole process, the cutoff to enter the top 50 will definitely go up. The threshold to enter top 100 will go up. And just look at the top two numbers, right? Number one, to get number one in India has become even more difficult. So it's definitely it's the evolution. It'll eventually happen. That's what I think it is.
700 new entrants, the 700 new age businesses.
It's not new age business. It's basically self-made entrepreneurs.
Self-made, yeah,
Self-made.
yes.
So it's got a mix of new age plus the various sectors in it. Startup founders are about 100, from various companies. So it's a mix and match of all the all the sectors. And I think it's again the part of the earlier thing that I said, which is basically, India country is growing, the business doing well, and these entrepreneurs continue to create super valuable enterprises. So I don't think it's limited or tied to the fact that they're self-made and that's why they're growing. I think the family business is also doing very well. It just follows a common trend. Of course, some sectors have done well. Hospitality has done well. So in the 700, there are entrepreneurs from hospitality, some from real estate, some from maybe textiles. They possibly have done well. While on the other hand, some of the entrepreneurs from, let's say, metals or let's say diagnostics, they would not have done well. So it's basically tied to industry and what's happening from a general perspective. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adani has toppled Mukesh Ambani, or last year what was the case?
In my list, in the list, I've written something called a great 5 lakh crore catch-up, right? So last year when we put out the IIFL Wealth Hurun Rich List, Mr. Ambani was wealthier than Adani by about 2 lakh crores, right? So this year, Mr. Adani is wealthier than Ambani by 3 lakh crores. So I call it the 5 lakh crore catch-up.
Also, what's interesting, Anas, is there are 13 entrants in this list who were born after 90s.
About 13 entrants, yeah. There are 13 entrants who were born after 90s, yeah.
Yeah. Which are the companies in Adani Group which has made them to make this kind of wealth?
I think,
There are many companies. Yeah.
you want to add?
No, there are many companies. I think it cuts across some 13, 14 listed entities. Yeah.
Yeah, and the trend really started after the demerger of the businesses, right? So that's when all the individual value unlocking happened. I also really believe that when the demerger of Reliance happens at some point in time, you'll see super valuable spaceships coming from Reliance as well, Jio, Reliance Retail, and so on. So that's what I. Do you want to add anything else, both of you? Yatin, Anirudha, do you want to add anything else?
contributed the maximum number of individuals, or it is something to do with the pandemic this year?
No, I think pharma, more than pharma, I think it was chemical industry. And I think what's worked out there is, of course, commodity prices going up, specialty chemicals coming in place because maybe on pandemic and so on and so forth. But also what has happened is China plus one strategy. I think China went very heavy on clamping down the pollution, and that made India as an alternate supplier as a source. And then, of course, came in the COVID, and then came in the China plus one strategy. So if you actually go to see, you get to hear a lot about startup, but if you see startup founders' ownership in their business is significantly lower. It's majority, if you see large companies, barring one or two like Nykaa, is institutionally owned or owned by PE investors who started way early in the VC cycle and supported the growth of so we always say, they own between 10 to 30% of the company. But when you look at the chemical industry, they're family owned, they're bootstrapped, they have highly technical knowledge about the industry, domain understanding. They started, 10, 15 years down the line, and the sector has really boomed because, India is becoming now second biggest source of supplier after China across industries, whether it's auto, paint, tire, food, your cosmetic, pharmaceuticals, and it's, the whole chemical industry broke up into multiple verticals. And that's very, very interesting to see the kind of number of new chemical companies which have become $1 billion in market cap. And there the ownership of promoters between 60 to 75%, right? And that's a large percentage of ownership of the company. The size of the company may not be as big as a tech firm, but the ownership of promoter is very, very large. So I think that is the most interesting fact. It's, you get to hear stories of tech, but I think the real absolute wealth number comes from a diverse group of industries, and chemical leading in that.
Over the last, say, 4-5 years, in terms of the top 5 sectors contributing to the list of number of individuals, has that seen a major shift, or it's more like just one notch above, minor changes?
I have the data.
Sector breakup.
I have the data on the sector breakup for the last 10 years also I have. I'll share with you. I think pharma has predominantly been one of the top contributing sectors of the last how many years. But I can give the exact breakup with you. I'll give it for the last 10 years, 5 years, and now. So you have all three. Yeah.
I think, if I may speak, for me, what was the most, captivating moment of this list was 102 cities. I think 122 cities, I'm sure there would be at least 10 or 15 cities where I'll have to probably look at the map to figure out where those cities are actually in India. And I'm sure it may, I'm sure maybe all of you know, but there will be some of you who will be actually grappling to find where the city exists in India. Because 122 is a very, very large amount of cities across India. And this is just expanding, because I remember a few years back, the numbers was not so large. That means the real India is actually moving, and the growth in tier 2 and 3 cities are phenomenal. By next year, if it touches almost 150 or 200, we'll be hitting the tier 4 cities also then.
Just to add to what Yatin said, Anirudha said, it's around 85 cities in India. We've also taken NRIs into consideration as well. Okay. So it's about 85 in India, about 122 including the cities as well, just to clarify. Yeah. The ranks have come down. For example, last year I think Dr. Shiv Nada was number 3. I think he's come down this year, but he's still in the top 10. Of course, the valuations, it's reflected in the valuation as well. No new, there are entrants. There are IT services, but then but then overall, if you look at the market cap or the valuation, that's come down. Okay, that's interesting. Jay Chaudhary of Zscaler, he was in the top 10 last year. He was actually one of the biggest gainer last year, and he's dropped out of top 10 this year. Yeah, so
after listing, they have not been very successful. A lot of them which have listed recently. Yeah. So, do you think this going ahead is going to be a trend, or do you see any changes?
No, I think it's more about valuation. That could be true for any companies. I think there was a period of aberration which investing in consumer tech, and there were very few stocks which were coming for IPO. and that creates some frenzy in retail investors and drive off the valuation. I think that trend was also which happened in 2000 in US, where you would have invested post IPO and you would have not made money for 10 years. In fact, Amazon stock was flat from 2001 to 2009. It took 8 years for Amazon investor to break even. So I would not call this that they have not made money. I think it's too early to talk about. But yes, if you bought something at a very valuation, it could be difficult to earn return from the price you paid for that asset.
Just to add to what Yatin said, see, even the startup private investing also, I've started hearing my portfolio companies saying that till now, till about this frenzy happened, they're only asking for growth and MOM growth and all that stuff, DAO, MAO and all that stuff. But now, all of a sudden, they're asking for what are the cash flow, what are the margins, these are the kind of questions that is frequently coming in. So I think I agree with Yatin. This trend is going to continue. Maybe the rules will be rewritten a little. Value creation strategies could be different, which will eventually impact the valuation of the business. So that's what, yeah.
Hi, we have mentioned 13 people born in the 90s made to the all are self-made. So which are the sectors, like, can we have the list or something?
I'll share the list with you. We'll share the list with you, yeah. Share the name, company, sector, everything we'll give, yeah.
Startup founders' valuations are concerned. I mean, I may be a bit wrong here because I haven't seen the entire list. Say, for instance, we have 4 or 5 listed startups, so it's very easy to, ascertain their wealth. But we have the largest chunk of these startups are unlisted. So when you look at or when you are computing their wealth, it's basically as per the last funding round, or do you have any other methodology to arrive at their wealth?
I'll try to answer. See, whenever we valued startups during the bull markets, right, when the stock markets were doing extremely well, we never gave a startup a benefit of bull market to the valuation. We just stuck to the valuation given by the investors. So even if, let's say, something is trading at whatever PE and all that stuff, let's say SaaS company is trading at whatever PE in the bull market, just because of that, we never valued another SaaS company in the private market with the same PE. We stuck to the same, whatever the investor is going, because at the end of the day, it's what the investors decide on the startup. Having said that, we are in our other list as well. We do something called the Hurun Global Unicorn Index. We have actually dropped out about 100, almost 100 startups off the list based on what we thought could have impacted the valuation. For example, companies like Klarna, which is a BNPL company, which valuation got knifed out drastically, which means we took a similar stand for other BNPL companies as well, right? From an Indian context, I haven't seen such heavy devaluation happening on a private company yet, right? So if we see that happening, that will give us more confidence to take a little more tougher stand in terms of valuation. But if we see that, of course, we will follow the trend. But we can't really fully go with the public markets and take that logic to the startup valuation, because we haven't done that when there was bull market. So we have to stick to the same standards. But yeah, moment we see some kind of demarcation or devaluation happening in the privates, definitely we will take that into cognizance.
Is that it in terms of the questions from the media?
Okay, I'll ask one question. I really want to ask Yatin and Anirudha one question. This is really about, do you get questions from your network or your client base or next gen about investing into crypto or blockchain and so on? Do you get questions on that? And what will your response been to that as a class?
So I think all the time, I think the Z is all about democratization of whether it's information, data, technology. They are very hooked on to online, social media, and there's huge amount of education which is happening, and it's picked up a big craze globally, investing in digital currencies or alternate asset class and NFT, of course. I think from our perspective, we have to discuss from also a regulatory framework, where if you are a registered investment advisor or a broker with SEBI, you're not allowed to advise one, right? Second thing, of course, there was investing in cryptocurrencies is going on, because the rules and regulations are getting set now, where SEBI will get powers to regulate this asset class also. Thirdly, I think for us, it is a new asset class. For us, it will have to go through test of times, which means you've only seen one side which is going up, and now it's bit of kind of corrected and coming down. We would like to see any asset class standing through test times, which is, market comes into completely distress, whether the current holders of the asset class stays through the belief that this is for very, very long term. And we've seen pendulum swings, right, for any asset class where you get over optimistic, then you go over pessimistic. I think too early for us to treat it as an investment asset class for now. Anirudh, if you want to add.
No, I think Yatin, you summed it very well. But what's interesting is your question, Anas, was that is the Zen XYZ, whatever we can call it. I think the new gen is extremely, I would probably use the word very exploratory in terms of looking at all the avenues in the world. So the good part is they want to explore, they want to know, but what is nice also is they want to take a very informed decision. So, while they want to pick up all the new things which is happening all over the world, but they also like to get full information before making the decision. And I think the information Yatin just answered about the regulatory and the various stress test, which is we have not seen, because every asset class has to go through cycles for us to kind of really make something out of it in terms of a recommendation. So those all things, unfortunately, is not really coming, and regulatory is a little bit of a gray area at the moment right now. So I think clearly these two things are still yet to kind of unravel and unfold before these all things really come in a very large fashion.
And also tax is not treated as an asset class. So your tax is a nominal income, which for asset class, when you invest, you make gains, you want to pay capital gains and not nominal income.
See, some of the things like Anas also comes out a little bit like a fad, like NFT, if you recollect a year and a half back, I think for a few months, all the newspapers everywhere was capturing about NFTs, and some of the arts were getting sold. And suddenly in the last 8-9 months, we haven't seen any headlines or any small caption anywhere in the media also in NFT. So it's just kind of fizzled out completely.
So a lot of things now it's coming out about certain valuations for NFTs were created by creating ghost buyers. It's like you selling your painting to your friend, and then the valuation number becomes the headline.
Yeah, I have a slightly different point of view, but because we will talk about it some other time. Yeah, great. Any other questions?
Mukesh Ambani, number one position. After how many years is dropped down to number 2?
10 years. 10 years. Since 2012 is number 1. Before that, we did not put out a list. So, the 2012 is when we started.
Yeah, so you'll have to do some homework out there.
Number 1.
Yeah, but there would be, I think, for a long time in tech boom, Aziz Premji. In tech boom, but you have to check the numbers. Yeah,
not in our list.
Around 2000, I'm saying.
Any other questions? I think. Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah, Shobha, please join us for the lunch. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you, Anirudh.
Really,
thank you.
Thank you, Anirudha. Thank you, Yatin. Really lovely meeting all of you in person.